The ballroom of the Four Seasons Hotel in Beverly Hills blazed with thousands of tiny crystal lights strung across the 30-foot ceiling, glinting off champagne flutes, diamond jewelry, and custom couture fabric. Hundreds of Los Angeles business elites filled every velvet-lined table, passing canapes and swapping hollow polite small talk about real estate deals and import profit margins. This wedding cost a flat $1.5 million, the most overhyped commercial social event across all of Southern California for the first 6 months of the year. Every local business journal had run pre-event coverage, gushing about the rags-to-riches groom finally marrying his long-lost teenage sweetheart. Not a single guest in the packed ballroom knew the ugly secret hidden behind the lavish celebration. 3 hours before the reception kicked off, the groom Jason had cornered Irene, his wife who'd stuck with him through 5 brutal years of near bankruptcy and hand-to-mouth warehouse labor, in a soundproof private hotel lounge, and pressured her into signing a one-sided divorce settlement that stripped her of every asset she'd personally funded. Irene stood tucked into a shadowed stone nook at the far rear of the ballroom, deliberately avoiding the crowd's wandering eyes. She wore a simple, faded black cotton midi dress she'd owned for 3 years, the only formal garment she could afford after the divorce left her with nothing but a $20,000 lump sum. The plain fabric stuck out jarringly against the sea of silk gowns, designer suits, and heirloom diamond necklaces draped over every guest's shoulders. Her fingers crumpled the printed divorce settlement so hard the paper creased and split along the edge of the compensation clause. The $20,000 figure burned into her vision like a brand. 5 years of her youth, every penny of the $230,000 trust fund her late parents had left solely to her, the $400,000 she'd borrowed by mortgaging her childhood downtown condo to keep Jason's business from collapsing. All of that blood, sweat, and capital reduced to a measly 20 grand. Less than a fraction of the money she'd poured into Miller import and export from the very first day of founding. Irene's mind drifted back to 5 years prior, a memory she'd replayed hundreds of times in sleepless nights. Back then, Jason had been a deadbeat 20-something fresh out of community college, sending out hundreds of job applications each week only to get generic rejection emails in return. He could not even scrape together $1,200 to cover monthly rent on a tiny rusted metal warehouse out near Long Beach Harbor, and he spent most days slouched on a folding metal chair, chain-smoking cheap discount cigarettes, and wallowing in self-pity about how the world had cheated him out of success. At that exact same time, Irene held a full-ride merit scholarship offer to NYU Stern School of Business, one of the most competitive undergraduate business programs in the entire United States, a golden opportunity that thousands of ambitious business students fought tooth and nail to land every admission cycle. The offer included free housing, full tuition coverage, and a paid summer internship on Wall Street, a guaranteed fast track to 6-figure corporate finance salaries straight after graduation. But watching Jason mope around the empty warehouse day after day, consumed by defeat and hopelessness, she'd set her own once-in-a-lifetime future aside without a single moment of hesitation. She withdrew the entire $230,000 trust fund her parents had left her upon their fatal car crash, handed every single cent to Jason as startup capital for Miller import and export, and moved into the warehouse's attached storage room to cut every possible overhead cost. To this day, Irene could still recall the stifling conditions of that 100-square-foot makeshift living space. In Southern California's brutal, humid summers, the air reeked of mildew trapped under stacked shipping crates, thick and suffocating enough to make her throat burn after only an hour indoors. Winters brought bitter coastal wind blowing straight through uninsulated metal walls. No central heating or portable space heater could mask the constant chill. The pair shared one tattered second-hand wool coat to wrap around their shoulders while cross-referencing customs paperwork, supplier invoices, and shipping manifests late into 2 or 3 a.m., surviving on microwave ramen and cheap bottled water for weeks on end to save every spare dollar for the business. One terrible fiscal year, a chain of overseas Asian wholesale clients deliberately stiffed them on nearly $3 million in outstanding shipment payments, vanishing off social media and ignoring every formal collection letter Irene mailed via international courier. The company's corporate operating account held barely $3,200 after payroll cleared that month, not enough to cover the mandatory port unloading fees, warehouse insurance premiums, or even weekly utility bills for the storage facility. Jason collapsed onto the cold concrete warehouse floor sobbing, swearing he'd scrap the entire trading venture and sign on as a minimum wage retail stocker at a local big box grocery store instead. Irene never told Jason about the desperate plan she hatched that same night. She drove for hours from bank to bank across downtown Los Angeles, scheduling back-to-back meetings with mortgage loan officers to finalize a refinance agreement on the downtown two-bedroom condo her parents had raised her in, the only permanent home she'd ever owned. She borrowed $400,000 against the property's equity, deposited every single loan check straight into Miller Import and Export's depleted corporate account, and pulled the failing enterprise back from the absolute brink of total collapse without uttering a word of worry or complaint to her husband. 4 or 5 straight unbroken years, Irene prioritized the business and Jason's comfort over every single personal luxury she might have wanted. She wore the same Navy professional blazer for 3 running years, patching small frays on the cuffs with cheap thread from a dollar store craft kit instead of buying new designer workwear. She never splurged on limited edition designer handbags, high-end facial cosmetic treatments, or exclusive ladies' country club tea parties that every other female business spouse in LA frequented every weekend. Every side administrative paycheck she earned handling extra freelance customs paperwork went straight back into covering the company's monthly operating losses, leaving her 0 disposable income for herself. She handled all financial reporting, cross-border customs clearance, overseas supplier communications, and warehouse inventory audits single-handedly, clocking 16-hour workdays 6 days a week without overtime pay or bonus compensation. Through relentless, uncelebrated grind, she turned the tiny storage-based trading outfit into a firm pulling $10 million in annual gross revenue, instantly catapulting Jason into the spotlight as a rising young entrepreneur within Los Angeles' tight-knit foreign trade circle. Back in those early profitable years, Jason would grab Irene's hand tight at every industry business mixer, pulling her front and center to introduce her to every wealthy investor and supplier contact in the room. He'd gush unscripted praise to every stranger within earshot, declaring she was a saving grace, the only person willing to stand beside him through every financial storm and crushing business setback. He'd make loud, heartfelt promises over expensive restaurant dinners that once the company stabilized and hit consistent $15 million annual revenue, they'd purchase a sprawling 8,000-square-foot oceanfront villa in Malibu with a private infinity pool and wine cellar, and spend every dollar of future profit making up for all the painful sacrifices she'd endured for his dream. Those warm, sincere pledges still echoed clearly in Irene's head as she stood alone in the wedding ballroom's shadowed corner, yet everything had unraveled completely the second his long-lost high school crush, Lena, returned to California after a decade living abroad in Western Europe. Lena had been Jason's quiet, unrequited teenage obsession all through their 4 years of public high school in Orange County. She'd left the United States immediately after graduation to chase a supposed modeling career across France, Italy, and Spain, surviving a consistent lavish, 5-star lifestyle by cycling through a string of wealthy older male partners who covered all her rent, travel, and shopping expenses without question. At the start of that calendar year, her latest live-in European boyfriend had drained their shared joint bank account and vanished to another country without warning, leaving her penniless, stranded in Paris with no valid long-term visa and 0 contacts willing to lend her cash. She scraped together enough leftover loose change for a one-way flight back to Los Angeles, and within 48 hours of landing, she sent Jason a long, tearful private message on Instagram asking to meet for coffee to catch up after all those years apart. Lena had spent 10 years perfecting the performance of a vulnerable, wronged victim, and their first in-person meeting played out exactly as she'd scripted it in her head. She buried her tear-streaked face against Jason's shoulder the second they sat down at a fancy Beverly Hills cafe, spilling a fabricated, over-dramatized story of endless loneliness, workplace discrimination, and cruel abandonment overseas, painting herself as a helpless orphan with no family or support system left in the world. The teenage romantic infatuation Jason had carried locked away in his heart for a full decade completely clouded his entire sense of rational judgment the instant he saw her crying. He fully ignored 5 years of unwavering, life-or-death devotion from Irene, pouring all his spare mental energy and corporate funds into spoiling Lena rotten instead. Over just 3 short months after Lena's return, Jason secretly siphoned nearly $1 million out of Miller Import and Export's untraceable petty cash and operating reserve accounts, moving the money to untraceable personal bank accounts registered under Lena's maiden name. He rented a luxury one-bedroom penthouse apartment for her in the heart of Beverly Hills with floor-to-ceiling ocean views and a private gym, paying $7,500 in monthly rent straight from company funds. Every week, he delivered armfuls of limited-edition Hermes handbags, certified loose diamond jewelry, and a brand-new black Porsche sports car to her apartment parking garage, all purchases logged under vague business entertainment expense reports he falsified to hide the theft from Irene's monthly financial reviews. Irene spotted the massive financial gaps during her standard end-of-month ledger reconciliation process, a task she'd personally handled every month without fail since the company's founding. Multiple six-figure cash transfers lacked matching shipping contracts, supplier receipts, or client service records, and corporate net profits plummeted month over month with no logical industry downturn to explain the steep losses. She printed out hundreds of pages of full bank transaction records, cross-referenced every fake expense report Jason had filed, and waited up until 1 a.m. for him to return home that night, fully intending to talk through the catastrophic cash leak calmly and collaboratively to figure out how to plug the damage and save their failing company before bankruptcy hit. Jason walked through the warehouse apartment's metal front door reeking of an expensive French women's jasmine perfume that Irene had never owned or worn a single bottle of. After skimming the thick stack of bank statements and falsified expense logs she'd laid out across their rickety fold-out dining table, he showed zero trace of remorse or guilt, only sharp, unbridled irritation and contempt. He snapped harsh accusations at her, labeling her narrow-minded, controlling, and obsessed with nothing but cold numbers and warehouse inventory counts instead of understanding his supposed mental strain running the business single-handedly. All you ever care about is ledgers, stock counts, and invoice deadlines. Being stuck in a room with you feels suffocating, like I'm trapped in a corporate audit 24/7 without a single moment of peace. Lena's soft, gentle, and emotionally attuned. She actually understands how much constant pressure this import business dumps on my shoulders every single day. She's the woman I want to build a real, happy life with, not you. We're getting divorced, effective immediately. Irene's heart turned completely ice-cold the second those words left his mouth, every warm memory of shared struggle freezing solid in her mind. She requested an equitable, legal split of all marital and corporate shared assets under California community property law, at minimum demanding the full $630,000 she'd personally invested into the business via trust fund and mortgage loans, plus proportional division of all corporate equity based on verified startup capital contributions. But Jason had pre-planned every single legal detail weeks earlier, hiring a cutthroat corporate divorce attorney to draft an outrageously one-sided settlement agreement designed to strip Irene of every possible claim to shared wealth. The paperwork awarded all industrial warehouse real estate, 100% company ownership equity, and both commercial delivery vehicles solely to Jason, offering only a one-time $20,000 cash payout as sole compensation, and required Irene to sign a binding legal waiver surrendering all future rights to file any asset, equity, or spousal support claims against him forever. Sign your legal name on every page before sundown tomorrow, and the $20,000 hits your checking account within 24 business hours. If you stubbornly refuse and try to drag this divorce out through county court litigation, my legal team will file endless procedural motions to drag the case out for 2 full years minimum. You'll walk away with $0 in settlement, and you'll be stuck covering tens of thousands in accumulating legal fees you cannot possibly afford to pay out of pocket. Jason's tone remained flat, frigid and unfeeling the entire time he spoke, as if 5 years of shared starvation, all-nighters, and near-bankruptcy struggle between them meant absolutely nothing to him whatsoever. Irene did not scream, cry, throw household objects, or launch into a screaming accusatory argument the way Lena would have in the exact same situation. She sat quiet for 10 full minutes, reading every binding clause of the unfair settlement paperwork, then picked up the cheap ballpoint pen Jason slid across the table and signed her legal name on every required signature line without a single verbal protest. The next dawn, she packed one small rolling suitcase holding only basic toiletries, a few changes of casual clothing, and a single photo album filled with old pictures of her late parents, and walked out of the warehouse storage home they built together from nothing without glancing back once. She thought signing those divorce papers marked the worst wound Jason could ever inflict on her life, but his cruelty stretched far beyond simple asset theft and betrayal. Only 2 months after the divorce finalized, he blew what little cash reserve the company had left on the $1.5 million Beverly Hills wedding reception currently unfolding around her, and mailed a glossy formal paper wedding invitation straight to her temporary downtown studio apartment, a blatant, unashamed display of triumphant gloating over finally marrying his long-desired teenage crush at her expense. At the absolute center of the hotel's massive ballroom dance floor, Lena stood draped in an $80,000 hand-sewn Italian silk custom wedding gown, a 40-carat white diamond necklace Jason had drained corporate emergency funds to purchase wrapped tight around her slender throat. She leaned fully into Jason's chest, accepting endless well wishes, handshakes, and air kisses from every wealthy guest filing past the newlywed stage. When her wandering gaze locked onto Irene standing alone in the shadowed rear nook of the room, a subtle, vicious, triumphant smirk tugged at the corner of her glossy red lips, impossible to miss even from 50 feet away. She deliberately tightened her grip around Jason's upper arm to draw every nearby guest's attention to their intimate embrace, then spoke in a deliberately raised, honeyed voice loud enough for Irene to catch every single word clearly across the noisy ballroom. "Honey, I'm so incredibly relieved we sorted out all the messy baggage from your past relationship when we had the chance. We don't have to drag ourselves down with someone dull, rigid, and completely incapable of appreciating the finer luxuries life has to offer anymore. From this day forward, endless wealth, 5-star travel, and exclusive social status are only waiting for the two of us to claim together." Jason followed Lena's line of sight directly to Irene's isolated position in the back corner, his dark eyes empty of any flicker of guilt, regret, or compassion, filled only with icy indifference and unmasked contempt. He spoke in a low, mocking undertone meant only for the nearby circle of business partners standing beside the wedding stage to overhear. "Don't stand there blocking everyone's view of the newlyweds with your miserable, sour expression. Take your tiny $20,000 settlement check and go live a boring, unremarkable civilian's life far away from Beverly Hills high society. Stay out of our orbit and never attempt to contact either of us ever again from this point forward." The surrounding wealthy guests all twisted their heads simultaneously to stare directly at Irene's lonely figure, launching a non-stop murmur of whispered gossip and judgmental side comments that floated across the ballroom's background music. A tiny handful of older, more compassionate businesswomen who'd watched Irene build a company alongside Jason from scratch felt quiet, genuine sympathy for the unfair way she'd been discarded. But the overwhelming majority of attendees scrambled to curry immediate favor with the newly anointed Mrs. Miller Lena, sneering quiet criticisms that Irene lacked natural feminine romance and softness, claiming she cared about nothing but crunching spreadsheets and tracking shipping numbers 24 hours a day, and that she simply did not deserve Jason's newfound multi-million-dollar business success and elite social standing. The snide, judgmental whispers, blinding displays of stolen luxury wealth, cold heartbreak of the man she'd sacrificed every personal dream for, and deliberate taunting from the woman who'd orchestrated her downfall weighed heavy on Irene's chest like a block of solid concrete. Yet not a single tear slipped from her eyes the entire time she stood listening to the crowd's cruel chatter. 5 brutal years surviving constant financial hardship and last-minute business disasters had taught her one unshakable life lesson. Crying and public displays of vulnerability solved absolutely nothing in Los Angeles's cutthroat corporate and elite social circles, and showing weakness would only invite further exploitation, mockery, and abuse from people already eager to take advantage of her misfortune. She squeezed the crumpled divorce settlement paperwork tighter between her palms, sweeping a slow, unblinking gaze over the newlywed couple locked in a performative, loving embrace atop the decorated stage, silently cementing the ironclad resolve burning deep inside her chest. The soft, affectionate gestures Jason had bought with stolen corporate revenue were nothing but a rehearsed stage performance for public consumption, Lena's tragic backstory of abandoned European hardship a complete, fabricated lie from start to finish. Every asset, social connection, and high society status the pair had seized from her by force would be taken back 100% in due time. Every wound inflicted on her youth, career, and family legacy would be repaid in full with irrefutable legal consequences, and she would never allow either of them to escape full accountability for their calculated greed and betrayal. Irene straightened her spine, squared her shoulders, and walked steadily out of the noisy, over-lavish ballroom without pausing to acknowledge a single staring guest. The sharp, salt-heavy ocean breeze off the Pacific cut through the cloying cloud of expensive designer luxury perfume clinging to her dress fabric the second she stepped through the hotel's glass front entrance, clearing her head of the ballroom's suffocating atmosphere of fake smiles and hidden greed. She did not glance back at the glowing hotel facade for even a split second, sliding into an ordinary 10-year-old civilian four-door sedan parked curbside and driving away from Beverly Hills' gated wealthy district without hesitation. All tangible assets she held at that exact moment amounted to nothing more than $20,000 in settlement cash deposited into a basic checking account, a single worn black casual dress, no powerful industry lobbying connections, and no inherited family fortune to fall back on for safety net support. But immaterially, she carried 5 full years of exclusive, direct overseas supplier contact lists, thousands of long-term loyal global vendor partnership agreements built entirely on her personal reputation for reliability, and a forged-through-adversity mental resilience no amount of wealth or elite social status could ever purchase. Her long, deliberate path to reclaim everything lost and deliver justice to the 2 people who destroyed her life officially began the second her sedan merged onto the northbound coastal highway away from the Four Seasons Hotel. The very next morning following the disastrous Beverly Hills wedding reception, Irene arrived at Los Angeles City Hall's business licensing division the moment the office opened at 8 a.m., carrying a folder full of pre-filled registration paperwork to launch her independent consulting enterprise under the official brand name Carter Cross-Border Trade Consulting. After years navigating every hidden legal pitfall of international import and export firsthand, she'd identified a massive untapped market gap within Southern California's small and medium foreign trade industry. Thousands of regional importers struggled with inadequate cross-border risk control protocols, chaotic quarterly capital planning systems, and costly avoidable customs compliance violations, while reputable, client-focused niche consulting firms specializing exclusively in this narrow trade vertical were extremely scarce across the entire West Coast business landscape. Irene recognized this unmet service demand as her clearest, most viable path to rebuild financial stability and reclaim the industry standing Jason had stolen from her alongside the company she'd co-founded. Her total startup operating capital capped out at only the $20,000 divorce settlement payout, leaving zero budget available to hire administrative, sales, or analytical staff for the first 3 months of operation. 4 weeks on end, Irene handled every single company job function completely alone: cold call sales outreach to local import businesses, fully customized cross-border risk analysis reports, federal customs compliance audits, one-on-one client consultation meetings, and all internal bookkeeping. She woke promptly at 5 o'clock every single morning to drive 45 miles south down the coastal highway to Long Beach Port, coordinating face-to-face with dock foremen and overseas shipping suppliers before the morning cargo rush hit the harbor. She spent every afternoon traveling across dozens of LA's suburban industrial parks to hold in-person strategy meetings with small business owners running independent import firms, then stayed late into the night in a tiny 300-square-foot rented downtown office drafting detailed multi-page trade risk analysis reports, surviving on an average of 4.5 hours of sleep each 24-hour cycle. Every overseas vendor Irene had partnered with during her years managing Miller Import and Export recognized her unmatched industry expertise, flawless track record of zero client financial losses, and honest, transparent business ethics. Within days of word spreading that she'd launched her independent consulting agency, dozens of long-term global suppliers reached out unprompted to book annual retainer service contracts with Carter Consulting, prioritizing Irene's firm over every competing risk advisory group operating across California. Irene operated with rigid, obsessive attention to factual detail on every analysis document she delivered, cross-referencing every financial statistic, shipping timeline, and international regulation clause dozens of times before releasing final reports to paying clients, and maintained a perfect zero-loss service record for every customer within the agency's first 2 full months of operation. Word-of-mouth positive referrals exploded across the Southern California foreign trade circle overnight, flooding her tiny downtown office with constant incoming client inquiries and signed service agreements. She soon hired Megan, a sharp, newly graduated UCLA business major with a minor in international trade law, as a part-time entry-level assistant to handle basic document formatting, client scheduling, and incoming phone call triage, lightening Irene's endless daily workload slightly for the first time since founding Carter Consulting. Meanwhile, the glossy, romantic wedding day glamour Jason and Lena had paraded in front of hundreds of elite guests dissolved completely within only 2 weeks of moving into their Beverly Hills penthouse apartment, and irreconcilable daily conflicts bubbled to the surface non-stop, growing uglier and more destructive with every passing day of cohabitation. Lena held zero sincere intention of seeking any form of full-time or part-time employment whatsoever, refusing every suggestion Jason made about pursuing remote consulting, boutique retail sales, or even volunteer charity work to fill her empty daily schedule. Her entire waking routine revolved around scheduled luxury shopping trips to Rodeo Drive, elective cosmetic plastic surgery appointments, and exclusive invite-only elite ladies' social tea parties, hosted by other wealthy Beverly Hills wives every weekday afternoon. She spent upwards of $100,000 in personal discretionary spending every single month without a second thought, demanding Jason swipe the corporate company credit card instantly for any limited edition designer jewelry, couture apparel, or imported European leather handbag that caught her eye while out shopping. Jason initially indulged every single one of her reckless spending whims without pushback, desperate to keep the peace and maintain the perfect newlywed couple public image they constructed at the million-dollar wedding reception. However, the company's core cash reserve pool had already been drained dry by the wedding venue, catering, and entertainment expenses, combined with 3 straight months of Lena's 6-figure monthly shopping sprees. Corporate cash flow teetered precariously on the absolute edge of total collapse, with warehouse monthly rent payments, full-time employee payroll disbursements, and overseas shipping carrier invoices repeatedly falling past their official due dates, with mounting late penalty fees stacking up every week. Every time Jason mustered the courage to gently beg Lena to temporarily cut back on unnecessary luxury purchases to stabilize the company's failing financial health, she erupted into explosive, hysterical screaming meltdowns filled with fabricated victimhood accusations and emotional manipulation. Lena twisted every minor household financial argument to fully frame Jason as the cruel, ungrateful villain in every conflict, tearfully claiming she'd abandoned a comfortable, carefree European lifestyle filled with 5-star travel and designer wardrobes, solely to follow him back to Los Angeles, only to be denied simple material luxuries that supposedly proved his genuine romantic love for her. She constantly brought up Irene as a bitter comparison weapon during every domestic fight, sneering that Jason remained permanently trapped under his ex-wife's rigid, money-obsessed influence deep down, incapable of appreciating soft, feminine beauty and relaxed luxury the way Lena deserved to be spoiled. Beyond her unrestrained shopping addiction and emotional manipulation tactics, Lena suffered from crippling, irrational possessiveness and pathological jealousy targeting every single woman Jason interacted with for work purposes. If Jason held a standard scheduled video conference or in-person sales meeting with any female client, female warehouse supervisor, or female administrative office staff member, Lena would immediately jump into her leased luxury sports car and race unannounced to the Miller Import and Export corporate office headquarters, staging loud, disruptive public screaming meltdowns in the open reception lobby. She hurled vicious personal insults at every woman present in the building during these outbursts, openly accusing them of intentionally seducing her husband behind her back, completely disrupting all daily office workflow and distracting every employee from their assigned job responsibilities. Multiple long-term corporate clients witnessed these chaotic, unprofessional public scenes during scheduled business visits to the office, instantly losing all confidence in Miller Import and Export's internal leadership stability and risk management capabilities, canceling multi-year bulk supply cooperation contracts one after another to avoid associating their brand with such unhinged public drama. Tom had served as Jason's most trusted core senior operations manager for all 5 years of the company's existence, standing alongside both Jason and Irene through every early-stage financial disaster and supply chain crisis to build Miller Import and Export from an empty metal warehouse into a multi-million-dollar revenue business. Alongside two other veteran full-time staff members who'd been with the firm since day one, Tom submitted formal, detailed written financial risk reports to Jason 3 separate times over the course of 2 months, urging him to immediately slash household frivolous spending budgets, slow down unplanned aggressive national business expansion plans, and steer completely clear of vague, unvetted overseas investment opportunities presented by unknown foreign operators with no verifiable corporate background records. Lena deeply resented Tom and the other 2 senior managers for repeatedly limiting her unlimited access to the company's liquid cash reserves and filled Jason's ears with calculated manipulative bedtime lies every single night, falsely claiming the 3 veteran employees secretly maintained regular behind-the-scenes contact with Irene, colluding together to sabotage Miller Import and Export's growth trajectory and undermine Jason's authority as sole CEO at every available opportunity. Already chronically anxious, irritable, and sleep-deprived from months of plummeting corporate profit margins and mounting overdue company bills, Jason fell fully victim to Lena's endless daily brainwashing and lost all capacity for rational, unbiased business judgment. Convinced his most loyal senior staff actively worked to sabotage his company out of hidden loyalty to his ex-wife, he marched into the corporate office one Friday afternoon and fired Tom and the 2 other core veteran managers on the spot with 0 severance pay or advance written notice. The sudden mass, forced departure of the company's 3 most experienced, knowledgeable operational leaders shattered Miller Import and Export's internal organizational structure completely within 72 hours of the firing announcements. Mid-level office and warehouse staff grew universally terrified of looming corporate bankruptcy and unpaid monthly wages, turning in formal resignation letters in droves throughout the following 2 weeks. Long-term overseas wholesale suppliers heard consistent industry rumors of Miller Import and Export's internal management chaos and severe cash shortage crisis, drastically slashing their standard monthly shipping order quotas and implementing a new mandatory full upfront cash payment policy for all future international shipments, further crushing the company's already broken, non-functional cash flow system. Countless multi-year loyal domestic retail clients, unwilling to risk partnering with an unstable, poorly managed import firm at risk of sudden bankruptcy, terminated all active supply chain agreements with Miller Import and Export, and switched their entire international sourcing consulting services directly to Irene's rapidly expanding Carter cross-border consulting agency instead. As Jason sank deeper and deeper into overwhelming corporate despair and unrelenting financial panic, Lena dangled a seemingly foolproof, high-profit get-rich-quick investment scheme directly in front of him to distract him from the company's mounting internal failures. She introduced a mysterious foreign businessman claiming official representation of a large European cross-border logistics investment firm who delivered an elaborate, polished sales pitch describing a purported overseas cold storage warehouse development project. The stranger openly advertised a guaranteed 100% total return on all invested capital within only 6 calendar months, claiming any $1 million initial cash input would double in value by the end of the half-year investment window with 0 reported market risk or operational overhead costs to account for. Desperately desperate to prove to every Los Angeles industry peer that he could build a wildly successful multi-million-dollar import business completely without Irene's expert financial guidance and years of industry connections, Jason ignored the cautious verbal warnings of his remaining junior office staff members and resolved to pour every single liquid dollar the corporation owned into the unregulated overseas investment opportunity Lena had pushed him toward. He emptied the full $2.8 million held within Miller Import and Export's last remaining unrestricted corporate liquid asset fund, then took out a series of high-interest unsecured commercial loans from multiple private lending companies and major national retail banks, securing a further $1.5 million in additional debt capital by signing over the company's industrial warehouse real estate and his personal Beverly Hills penthouse apartment as legal collateral. Against repayment, he transferred the combined total $4.3 million full investment sum directly to an anonymous offshore overseas bank account the foreign salesman provided him, daydreaming nonstop about instant overnight wealth that would wipe out every outstanding company debt and erase all public embarrassment surrounding the firm's current operational collapse. During this exact same 2-month window, the official West Coast top-tier capital and international trade summit opened its registration doors to outstanding regional industry practitioners for keynote speaking presentation slots. Based on her 5 years of hands-on frontline cross-border trade risk management experience and flawless client success track record, Erin was formally invited to deliver a 40-minute core industry presentation to the full assembly of attending CEOs, investment bankers, and international logistics executives. She broke down dozens of hidden financial, legal, and customs pitfalls small and medium import-export business owners regularly encountered during global supply chain operations, laying out practical, immediately actionable capital control frameworks and compliance checklists tailored for mid-market trade firms, earning unanimous verbal approval and quiet professional respect from every industry executive seated in the conference ballroom audience. It was on the second day of this 3-day summit event that Erin first crossed professional paths with Evan Thorne, the CEO of Thorne Global Investment Group. Evan headed Thorne Investment Group, officially ranked among the top 5 largest privately held capital management firms operating across the entire United States, with diversified international business divisions covering cross-border import/trade logistics, luxury commercial real estate development, overseas cold storage warehouse construction, and biopharmaceutical research manufacturing. His verified personal net worth sat comfortably well above $10 billion, with corporate offices spread across New York, Miami, Chicago, Seattle, and Los Angeles. At 41 years of age, he previously endured a transactional, loveless business-arranged marriage with a socialite heiress 10 years prior. His ex-wife had cared exclusively about accumulating tangible capital assets and elite country club social status throughout their marriage, with zero interest in collaborative business planning or genuine emotional partnership, and the pair had split amicably via no-fault California divorce 3 years earlier due to irreconcilable core life values. He openly despised the fake, performative hollow social culture dominating Los Angeles' ultra-wealthy elite Beverly Hills circles, and found genuine, unfeigned admiration for Erin's grounded, unpretentious, self-made independent professional spirit. Her refusal to rely on wealthy male financial backers to shortcut her career growth, paired with her data-driven, practical business mindset, resonated deeply with Evan's own personal outlook on honest entrepreneurship. After listening closely to Erin's full summit presentation and asking several insightful follow-up questions during the post-speaker Q&A panel, Evan approached her at the conference-catered lunch reception to exchange professional contact information and immediately proposed a formal long-term business cooperation partnership between Thorne Group and Carter Consulting. He referred dozens of small and medium foreign trade companies operating under Thorne Investments' broader corporate portfolio directly to Erin's downtown agency for exclusive custom cross-border risk consulting services, guaranteeing consistent, steady client retainer revenue for her fledgling business for years to come. The pair met frequently for work-focused conference calls and in-person strategy meetings over the following months, yet Evan never overstepped professional boundaries to pry into the painful, traumatic private details of Erin's past marital betrayal and financial ruin at Jason's hands. He offered unlimited access to Thorne Group's industry data resources and national supplier networks purely within professional business parameters, speaking gently, patiently, and respectfully at all times, fully honoring Erin's independent career timeline and personal emotional boundaries without pressure of any kind. Still deeply traumatized and distrustful of romantic male partners after 5 years of Jason's calculated deception and greed, Erin hesitated to rush headlong into a new, serious romantic relationship with Evan, choosing to maintain strictly professional collaborative ties while quietly observing his consistent respectful character and reliable conduct over multiple months of regular business interaction. Only a single calendar month after Jason transferred his full $4.3 million investment capital to the anonymous overseas offshore account, the fraudulent European warehouse investment project collapsed entirely without advance warning or communication of any kind. The unknown foreign businessman's purported European investment shell company deleted its official corporate website, permanently blocked every international phone number, email address, and social media contact channel linked to the operation. and the mysterious investor himself vanished completely without leaving a single trace of his real identity or current physical location anywhere across Europe or the United States. All $4.3 million of combined corporate liquid assets and high-interest loan debt Jason had poured into the scheme was lost permanently with zero possibility of legal asset recovery or partial reimbursement from any overseas regulatory body. The mandatory repayment deadline for his massive multi-million-dollar bank and private lender commercial loans arrived exactly 30 days after the investment scam fully unraveled, and unable to cover the combined principal and compound interest payments on the outstanding debt, the partnering National Retail Bank froze Miller Import and Export's entire corporate operating account immediately, placing all company-owned warehouse inventory, shipping containers, commercial delivery trucks, and industrial real estate properties under official county court asset seizure pending public auction to recoup unpaid loan funds. Months of accumulated unpaid overseas supplier invoices, overdue full-time employee monthly salaries, backlogged warehouse insurance and rental fees, plus massive contractual loan penalty interest charges combined to saddle Jason with a cumulative total of nearly $50 million in outstanding unsecured and secured corporate debt. Miller Import and Export lacked any remaining liquid operating funds to continue daily import-export shipping, client coordination, or warehouse management operations, issuing an official public corporate notice announcing full voluntary bankruptcy liquidation within 48 hours of the bank account freeze order taking effect. County court asset auditors arrived at the Miller Import and Export warehouse compound within 1 week of the bankruptcy announcement to catalog every tangible company asset for scheduled public auction proceedings: stacked steel shipping containers, heavy cargo loading machinery, commercial delivery vans, office desk furniture, filing cabinets, and digital accounting hardware were all tagged, logged, and locked under court seal, scheduled to be sold off to the highest outside bidder to chip away at Jason's mountain of outstanding corporate debt obligations. The business Jason had spent 5 grueling years building up from an empty rusted metal warehouse, and zero startup capital crumbled to absolute dust in barely 6 short months of Lena's reckless financial manipulation and Jason's own reckless, unvetted high-risk investment decisions. To add further crushing financial pressure onto Jason's already insurmountable debt load, Tom and the 2 other fired senior managers organized a coordinated group civil lawsuit alongside over a dozen former rank-and-file warehouse and office staff members, filing formal legal claims against Miller Import and Export for months of unpaid overtime wages and wrongful termination severance compensation, adding an additional $2.1 million in potential court-ordered damage payouts to Jason's growing list of financial liabilities. Chapter 3: Everyone abandons the sinking ship. Lena steals all remaining assets and disappears. Word of Miller Import and Export's sudden total bankruptcy and $50 million corporate debt crisis spread like wildfire across every professional foreign trade network operating throughout Los Angeles County within a single business day of the official liquidation notice publishing online. Every business associate, industry investor, and casual social acquaintance who'd once fawned over Jason's rising entrepreneurial status to beg for favorable bulk supply partnership opportunities actively crossed the street or ducked into side storefronts to avoid making direct eye contact with him in all public spaces. Executives who'd rushed to exchange glossy embossed business cards and verbally promise multi-million-dollar joint venture contracts at every prior industry gala event would deliberately alter their walking routes to dodge running into Jason at grocery stores, coffee shops, and downtown office buildings. Openly terrified, he would attempt to beg for emergency personal loans and drag their own stable businesses into association with his catastrophic multi-million-dollar debt scandal in public. Corporate failure. Mr. White, a ruthless senior debt collection attorney retained jointly by Jason's multiple banking and private lending creditors, led a rotating team of 3 aggressive legal collection agents to camp outside Jason's luxury Beverly Hills penthouse apartment every single morning at 9 a.m. sharp, lingering in the building's gated lobby and front sidewalk to hound him for immediate partial debt repayment throughout all daylight hours. The collection team spoke in harsh, unforgiving, threatening language every time they confronted Jason in person, repeatedly reading aloud official state civil court statutes outlining potential wage garnishment, asset seizure, and even limited criminal liability charges if the outstanding multi-million-dollar balances remained unpaid past their legal statute of limitations deadlines. Jason lived in constant, paralyzing fear and chronic insomnia for weeks on end, clinging desperately to a delusional false hope that Lena would abandon her endless luxury shopping habits and frivolous elite social schedule to stand beside him through the corporate crisis, collaborating with him to craft a realistic financial recovery plan and rebuild a smaller, more conservative import business from the wreckage of Miller Import and Export's bankruptcy. One evening, after enduring 3 straight hours of aggressive verbal harassment and repayment demands from Mr. White's debt collection team on his apartment building front sidewalk, Jason dragged his exhausted, mentally drained body back up the residential elevator to his penthouse unit and pushed open the heavy solid wood front door. The second he stepped over the apartment threshold, every drop of warm blood ran cold in his veins, a wave of pure cold shock washing over his entire body. The upscale walk-in closet storage rooms, wall-mounted jewelry display cabinets, and locked luxury watch safes lining the penthouse's master bedroom had all been completely emptied of every valuable item Lena owned or had ever received as a gift from Jason over the prior 3 months of their marriage. She had transferred every remaining dollar held within their joint personal checking and savings accounts to an untraceable offshore digital banking wallet registered solely under her maiden name, without leaving a single cent behind for Jason to cover basic daily living expenses or legal consultation fees. A crumpled, hastily scribbled handwritten note lay discarded on the marble living room coffee table, devoid of even a single phrase of former romantic affection, regret or remorse for the life she'd helped destroy alongside Jason's corporate empire. Jason, you are now drowning in an insurmountable mountain of unpaid debt with 0 high-value liquid assets or profitable business ventures left to your name, and I have absolutely no intention of adjusting my comfortable 5-star luxury lifestyle to suffer through poverty and endless creditor harassment alongside you for years on end. I only chose to pursue a romantic relationship with you and agree to this lavish Beverly Hills wedding from the very start solely for access to your multi-million-dollar import company's unlimited corporate cash reserves and high-end social elite connections within Southern California's wealthy business circles. Now that every tangible asset we jointly controlled has been seized by the county court to settle your catastrophic business failure, there is no remaining logical reason for us to stay romantically connected any longer. Do not waste your limited remaining time or minimal financial resources attempting to hire private investigators or contact mutual acquaintances to hunt down my current location. I have permanently cut off all channels of communication linking me to Los Angeles and your ruined life. Jason's hands shook violently enough to crumple the thin paper note completely as he read its cold, unfeeling contents line by line, the decade-long idealized romantic fantasy he'd constructed around Lena's fabricated, vulnerable personality shattering into irreparable pieces inside his mind all at once. Every expensive designer handbag, certified diamond jewelry set, luxury sports car lease payment, and high-rise penthouse rent check he'd funded with stolen corporate operating cash over those 3 months of secret infatuation and reckless spending had been nothing more than premeditated fuel for a carefully orchestrated long-term financial scam targeting his multi-million-dollar import business assets and social elite standing. He exhausted every personal social media contact, overseas shipping industry associate, and former high school friend he possessed to launch a widespread search for Lena's current whereabouts across the entire United States and European continent, eventually learning the full unvarnished truth from their shared mutual friend Sarah over a casual weekend coffee meetup in downtown LA. Lena had converted all the jewelry, designer goods, and cash gifts Jason had lavished on her into fully liquid, untraceable offshore currency funds within 48 hours of drafting the breakup note, purchased a non-refundable one-way cross-country first-class flight ticket to Miami International Airport, and fled Southern California permanently to move in with a separate independently wealthy real estate developer she'd matched with on an elite exclusive dating app months prior to Jason's corporate bankruptcy. She had deleted every phone number, Instagram profile, Facebook account, and email address linked to her Los Angeles identity, severing every possible communication channel between herself and Jason entirely with zero intent of ever re-establishing contact again in the future. Total corporate collapse, deliberate, calculated betrayal by the woman he'd sacrificed his entire business, reputation, and 5 years of marital stability for, plus $50 million in insurmountable secured and unsecured debt crashed over Jason in 3 simultaneous devastating blows, sending him plummeting headfirst to absolute rock bottom with no safety net or loyal support system left to cushion his fall. After the county court finished auctioning off every seized warehouse, vehicle and office asset to recoup partial loan repayment funds, the total auction proceeds still covered less than 12% of Jason's total outstanding debt balance, leaving tens of millions in unpaid financial liability weighing solely on his individual personal credit and legal record. With zero liquid savings, valuable personal property, or marketable professional industry connections left to leverage for emergency income, he was forced to break his lease on the $7,500 monthly Beverly Hills penthouse apartment and move into a rundown, dilapidated single-room studio rental unit tucked deep within South Los Angeles' low-income industrial residential district. The cramped 400-square-foot rental space was dark, drafty, and poorly maintained by its cheap absentee landlord, lacking functional central heating or proper window weather stripping to block the bitter coastal winter wind blowing through cracked glass panes. The interior walls were covered in peeling water-damaged paint and mold stains, and the narrow street outside the building echoed with non-stop 24-hour semi-truck engine roars, loud street vendors shouting, and late-night homeless pedestrian commotion. Chaotic, impoverished living environment that existed in an unrecognizable world apart from the multi-million-dollar luxury penthouse and 6,000-square-foot oceanfront villa Jason had spent months fantasizing about owning with Lena, before the investment scam bankruptcy destroyed everything. Every corporate hiring manager running background checks on incoming executive or mid-level management applicants immediately spotted Jason's public $50 million corporate bankruptcy court filing record on California's State Business Registry database, rejecting every single job application he submitted for high-paying office leadership positions outright without a follow-up interview or consideration of any kind. Left with absolutely no other viable professional employment options to generate even minimal monthly income, Jason walked through the open metal gates of the Long Beach Port Freight Yard one early weekday morning to apply for unskilled temporary manual cargo labor on a daily wage pay schedule. Foreman Hank, a gruff 58-year-old lifelong port worker who'd supervised dock labor crews for 30 years straight, took mild pity on Jason's average physical build and desperate financial state, agreeing to hire him on a casual, as-needed daily labor basis only, requiring 10 consecutive grueling hours of heavy shipping container lifting, hauling, and sorting work per shift for barely $18 an hour before mandatory state tax withholdings were deducted from his weekly paychecks. The minimal take-home wage barely covered the $320 monthly studio rent payment plus basic cheap grocery store food and bottled water to survive each 30-day cycle, leaving zero leftover cash to put toward partial debt repayment installments or basic personal medical care if he fell ill from overexertion. One overcast Saturday afternoon in mid-October, Hank assigned Jason a mandatory crosstown delivery run transporting small high-value art shipping crates to a 5-star luxury corporate gala venue hotel located deep within central Beverly Hills' gated elite residential district. A plush red velvet event carpet lined the hotel's main front entrance sidewalk, crowded wall-to-wall with elite capital investment CEOs, multi-million-dollar real estate developers, and nationally recognized import-export industry executives from every major West Coast metropolitan area, all gathered to attend a closed-door annual cross-border trade investment dinner gala hosted by Thorne Global Investment Group inside the hotel's grand main ballroom. Irene stood out effortlessly amid the sea of male suit-clad industry executives in a sleek, minimalist custom-tailored charcoal gray business suit, her makeup soft, neutral and understated, her posture calm, collected and quietly confident amid the bustling crowd of wealthy socialites and corporate leaders. Evan Thorne walked steadily one half-step beside her left side, pausing every few paces to steady her footing on the hotel's uneven stone entry staircase with a gentle, supportive hand on her upper elbow, then brushing loose strands of wind-tousled dark hair back from her shoulders with quiet, unhurried tender care that spoke volumes of his genuine, consistent adoration for her character and spirit. The quiet, Sustained devotion and small thoughtful daily gestures Evan regularly offered Irene were something Jason had never once bothered to provide her over the full 5 years of their shared marital partnership running Miller Import and Export together. Even during the most stressful early startup years of near bankruptcy and endless overnight warehouse labor shifts, every elite business, guest lining the hotel's red carpet walkway, paused mid-conversation to step forward and greet the pair warmly with firm handshakes and sincere congratulatory remarks on their successful professional collaboration and blossoming personal romantic relationship. Every single industry insider in attendance held full awareness that Carter Cross-Border Consulting had locked in an exclusive multi-year national long-term cooperation deal with Thorne Global Investment Group 6 months prior to the gala event, expanding Irene's agency's total annual service volume 3 full times over its original startup scale to firmly claim the undisputed top market leadership spot within the entire West Coast cross-border trade risk management consulting vertical. Irene had climbed to this peak position within her industry entirely through her own unmatched professional expertise, relentless work ethic, and unbroken track record of zero client financial losses, with zero reliance on romantic male financial backers or inherited family wealth shortcuts to accelerate her business growth trajectory. Jason glanced down abruptly at his own dust-caked, oil-stained and heavily worn navy blue port laborwork uniform, his palms thickly covered in rough, hardened calluses and tiny split-open bleeding cuts from years of constant heavy shipping container hauling and metal crate lifting work at the freight yard. The stark, devastating contrast between his ragged, impoverished labor estate and Irene's polished, celebrated elite businesswoman image standing center stage among the nation's wealthiest corporate leaders seared sharp, burning pain straight through his chest cavity, and an overwhelming tidal wave of bitter, soul-crushing regret crashed over his entire body all at once. Leaving his vision blurring with unbidden hot tears, he struggled desperately to hold back in front of the surrounding gala crowd's curious staring eyes, ignoring the growing circle of whispering, curious gala guests who'd paused their social conversations to watch the strange confrontation unfolding on the hotel's front entry sidewalk. Jason rushed forward at a quick stumbling pace to physically block Irene's forward walking path, paying zero mind to Evan's towering, imposing physical frame and quiet authoritative presence standing directly beside her. His voice cracked and wavered with raw, desperate humility, clinging tightly to an entirely unrealistic, impossible shred of delusional hope that Irene might still harbor lingering soft affection for their 5 years of shared startup hardship together. Irene, I know beyond every shadow of a doubt I've committed unforgivable, irreparable mistakes that wrecked both your career and your life all those months back. Every single night since everything collapsed around me, I've drowned nonstop in crippling, sleepless regret over every cruel choice I made to betray you and throw away everything we built side by side. I've finally seen Lena's manipulative, gold-digging true nature crystal clear with no more rose-tinted teenage infatuation clouding my judgment, and you are the only human being who ever loved me genuinely, unconditionally, and without hidden financial motives in my entire life. Can you find it within your heart to grant me just one single chance to fully make amends for every harm I've inflicted on you over these years? Let us wipe the slate clean and restart our life partnership from the ground up together, and I will spend every single remaining day of my entire existence pouring every ounce of my energy into making up for every tear, every loss, and every betrayal I've forced you to endure at my hands. Irene's facial expression remained perfectly neutral, completely devoid of any flicker of burning anger, soft sympathetic pity, or lingering nostalgic fondness for their shared past together, her gaze steady and unblinking as she stared directly at Jason's disheveled, broken, destitute physical form, her tone cool, measured and utterly unyielding without a single trace of emotional compromise. In that soundproof hotel lounge 3 months ago, you pressed that outrageously unfair, asset-stripping divorce settlement paperwork directly into my hands, threatened endless years of costly, draining civil litigation to financially ruin me if I refused to sign away every asset I'd personally funded, and personally severed every single emotional and legal thread binding our 5 years of shared sacrifice, struggle, and marital partnership together as a unit. You made the fully conscious, voluntary choice to walk away from the woman who stood beside you through every financial disaster and crushing business setback life could throw at us, And the second both of us put our legal signatures on those divorce documents, our shared story, all mutual obligations, and every possibility of reconciliation ended completely and permanently. There exists no viable path to go back and rewrite the irreversible choices you freely made back then. Evan stepped half a deliberate pace forward to subtly position his full broad frame between Irene and Jason, a quiet, unmissable physical barrier cutting Jason off from any further attempt to reach or speak directly to her. His steady, calm voice carried quiet, unshakable authority and an uncrossable personal boundary that left zero room for negotiation or further pleading from Jason's side. Irene is my official fiancée as of 2 months prior, and I will not tolerate any further intentional blocking, stalking, or confrontational harassment directed toward her personal or professional daily life moving forward under any circumstances. If you make one additional attempt to intercept, follow, or verbally badger her in public or private spaces again after today's incident, Thorn Global Investment Group's full-time in-house corporate legal team will immediately draft, file, and serve a formal civil harassment restraining lawsuit with the Los Angeles County Superior Court, pursuing documented monetary compensatory damages and a permanent court-ordered no-contact legal order against you statewide. Jason stared hard at Evan's poised, polished, elite business bearing, tailored designer suit, and quiet, unflappable confidence, then snapped his gaze back down to his own grease-saturated, torn labor uniform, scuffed steel-toe work boots, and dirt-caked exposed forearms covered in hauling scars, overwhelmed by crippling, face-burning shame that rooted his feet solidly to the hotel's sidewalk pavement where he stood. Every surrounding elite gala guest within visual range twisted their heads to stare openly at the humiliating exchange unfolding, carrying on a constant stream of snickering, mocking side commentary that echoed loud enough for Jason to clearly overhear every cutting remark they exchanged about his fallen status and shameless, desperate behavior. Unable to bear the endless public ridicule and unflinching judgment a single moment longer, he ducked his head all the way down to his chest and shuffled away from the hotel entrance in complete disgrace, vanishing into the crowded side street pedestrian traffic without glancing back even once. Back inside his cramped, mold-stained 400-square-foot South LA studio rental unit later that night, Jason lay wide awake on a thin, threadbare second-hand twin mattress until 3 a.m., replaying every single memory of their 5 shared startup years on an endless, painful mental loop that refused to shut down no matter how hard he squeezed his eyes closed to block the images out of his mind. He vividly recalled the day Irene rejected the full-ride NYU Stern Business Scholarship to hand over her entire parental trust fund savings as his company's startup capital, frigid winter mornings at Long Beach Port where her bare hands split open and swelled bright red raw sorting shipping manifests for hours on end without a single complaint of cold or exhaustion. The afternoon, she signed over full equity rights to her childhood downtown condo to secure a $400,000 rescue mortgage loan to pull his failing business back from bankruptcy's absolute brink. Every household meal, bill payment, and warehouse administrative task she handled entirely single-handedly without demanding any split of corporate profit or personal luxury compensation in return. Her only quiet, lifelong wish, simple stability and consistent mutual companionship shared between the two of them with no hidden greed or deception poisoning their bond. But he blinded himself completely to that quiet, unwavering, self-sacrificing devotion Irene had freely offered him for half a decade, chasing a hollow, meaningless teenage romantic infatuation with a manipulative gold digger instead, draining his entire company's lifeblood funding Lena's endless luxury shopping sprees and elite social schedule, then ruthlessly driving the only woman who'd ever genuinely loved and supported him out into financial ruin and public social humiliation with zero mercy or second thought. Now bankrupt, drowning in tens of millions in unpayable secured debt, completely isolated from every former friend, business contact, and family member who'd once surrounded him, he finally, painfully comprehended the irrevocable truth. He'd voluntarily thrown away the only pure, selfless, unconditional romantic love and loyal business partnership he would ever receive in his entire lifetime for nothing more than temporary empty physical attraction and a fabricated performance of soft feminine Vulnerability from a calculating con artist with zero genuine care for his well-being whatsoever. Jason stared hard at Evan's poised, polished, elite business bearing, tailored designer suit and quiet, unflappable confidence, then snapped his gaze back down to his own grease-saturated, torn labor uniform, scuffed steel-toe work boots and dirt-caked exposed forearms covered in hauling scars, overwhelmed by crippling, face-burning shame that rooted his feet solidly to the hotel's sidewalk pavement where he stood. Every surrounding elite gala guest within visual range twisted their heads to stare openly at the humiliating exchange unfolding, carrying on a constant stream of snickering, mocking side commentary that echoed loud enough for Jason to clearly overhear every cutting remark they exchanged about his fallen status and shameless, desperate behavior. Unable to bear the endless public ridicule and unflinching judgment a single moment longer, he ducked his head all the way down to his chest and shuffled away from the hotel entrance in complete disgrace, vanishing into the crowded side street pedestrian traffic without glancing back even once. Back inside his cramped, mold-stained 400-square-foot South LA studio rental unit later that night, Jason lay wide awake on a thin, threadbare secondhand twin mattress until 3 a.m., replaying every single memory of their 5 shared startup years on an endless, painful mental loop that refused to shut down no matter how hard he squeezed his eyes closed to block the images out of his mind. He vividly recalled the day Irene rejected the full-ride NYU Stern Business Scholarship to hand over her entire parental trust fund savings as his company's startup capital. Frigid winter mornings at Long Beach Port, where her bare hands split open and swelled bright red raw sorting shipping manifests for hours on end without a single complaint of cold or exhaustion. The afternoon, she signed over full equity rights to her childhood downtown condo to secure a $400,000 rescue mortgage loan to pull his failing business back from bankruptcy's absolute brink. Every household meal, bill payment, and warehouse administrative task she handled entirely single-handedly without demanding any split of corporate profit or personal luxury compensation in return. Her only quiet, lifelong wish, simple stability and consistent mutual companionship shared between the two of them with no hidden greed or deception poisoning their bond. But he'd blinded himself completely to that quiet, unwavering, self-sacrificing devotion Irene had freely offered him for half a decade, chasing a hollow, meaningless teenage romantic infatuation with a manipulative gold digger instead, draining his entire company's lifeblood funding Lena's endless luxury shopping sprees and elite social schedule, then ruthlessly driving the only woman who'd ever genuinely loved and supported him out into financial ruin and public social humiliation with zero mercy or second thought. Now bankrupt, drowning in tens of millions in unpayable secured debt, completely isolated from every former friend, business contact and family member who'd once surrounded him, he finally, painfully comprehended the irrevocable truth. He'd voluntarily thrown away the only pure, selfless, unconditional romantic love and loyal business partnership he would ever receive in his entire lifetime for nothing more than temporary empty physical attraction and a fabricated performance of soft feminine vulnerability from a calculating con artist with zero genuine care for his well-being whatsoever. After the humiliating hotel gala sidewalk encounter with Irene and Evan burned itself permanently into Jason's memory, his all-consuming regret curdled into stubborn, irrational delusion that blinded him to every obvious reality of his irreversible social and financial ruin. He convinced himself deep within his warped line of thinking that Irene still harbored powerful, lingering soft affection for their 5 years of shared warehouse startup struggle together, and that if he simply persisted long enough with constant public groveling, tearful apologies, and desperate stories of his current destitute, debt-ridden living conditions, her old compassion for his former self would resurface, softening her heart enough to write a multi-million-dollar personal check to fully erase every last cent of his mountainous outstanding debt balance, potentially even agreeing to reconcile their broken romantic partnership and take him back into her successful elite business life alongside Evan Thorne's multi-billion-dollar corporate empire. Jason deliberately rearranged his weekly port freight labor shift schedule with foreman Hank every Monday morning to finish his daily cargo hauling duties 2 full hours early each weekday afternoon, allowing him ample time to camp out on the concrete sidewalk directly outside Carter Cross-Border Consulting's modern downtown high-rise office building main lobby entrance. He carried cheap grocery store long-stem red roses purchased at a discounted clearance rack every afternoon, clutching multi-page handwritten apology letters scrawled on crumpled notebook paper filled with pages of self-loathing admissions and dramatic promises of lifelong change behavior if granted a single second chance with Irene. The exact second Irene stepped out of the glass lobby doors at the agency's official 6 p.m. closing time each evening, Jason would rush forward to cut off her walking path, rambling nonstop for minutes on end about his crippling, all-consuming remorse over past betrayal, the vicious manipulative deception Lena had subjected him to over the prior year, and his current unbearable daily reality of constant debt collector harassment, insufficient labor wages, and barely affordable basic food and shelter costs to survive day-to-day without outside financial aid. Megan, Irene's sharp, loyal full-time agency assistant who'd witnessed Jason's repeated, uninvited public ambushes on over 8 separate weekday evenings straight, repeatedly approached Irene after each harassment incident to formally offer filing an official local LAPD police report for criminal stalking and public harassment charges against Jason. Yet Irene held her back every single time, unwilling to waste valuable work hours and mental energy pursuing immediate legal action unless his behavior escalated to physical contact or direct threats of harm toward her person or agency staff. Irene issued stern, clear, unwavering verbal warnings to Jason on 3 separate occasions during these sidewalk confrontations, stating plainly that the two of them possessed no remaining personal, financial, or professional connection whatsoever, and ordering him to cease all future loitering, waiting, and intercepting behavior outside her office premises permanently without delay. Yet Jason clung stubbornly to his unrealistic delusional hope of a miraculous reconciliation and debt bailout from Irene's side, flat out refusing to comply with her repeated verbal cease and desist requests week after week. He remained fully convinced that Irene's exclusive long-term business partnership with multi-billionaire Evan Thorne guaranteed the agency unlimited disposable corporate profit revenue, and that a few $1 million in personal debt relief would amount to nothing more than a trivial, negligible expense from her perspective, with zero lasting financial impact on her thriving consulting enterprise. One weekday evening, exactly 7 days following the Beverly Hills Hotel Gala confrontation incident, Evan finished a full 8-hour Thorne Group corporate executive board meeting downtown and drove his private luxury sedan over to Carter Consulting's office tower to pick Irene up for a pre-planned private dinner reservation at a high-end downtown seafood restaurant they'd booked weeks earlier. He rounded the building's front circular driveway, just in time to witness Jason physically grab a hold of Irene's upper forearm with both hands to hold her stationary in place against the concrete sidewalk, pouring out loud, emotionally charged, desperate sob stories and begging pleas for forgiveness and financial rescue without any regard for surrounding pedestrian onlookers walking past the office lobby. Evan's facial expression darkened slightly with quiet, suppressed irritation at the blatant physical contact and uninvited public harassment, though he deliberately avoided creating a disruptive, attention-grabbing public scene in front of the building's passing office workers and downtown foot traffic crowd to spare Irene additional unwanted public embarrassment and gossip. The very next business morning following this disturbing physical interception incident, Thorne Global Investment Group's full-time in-house corporate legal department drafted, printed, notarized, and hand-delivered an official formal attorney cease and desist letter directly to Jason's dilapidated South LA studio rental unit via certified USPS priority mail with signature confirmation required upon delivery. The legal document laid out every verifiable documented instance of Jason's repeated loitering, sidewalk interception, verbal badgering, and unwanted physical contact harassment targeting Irene outside her professional workplace over the prior month in explicit chronological detail, clearly stating that all such consistent actions constituted actionable civil harassment under California state family and civil court statutes. The letter issued a strict final warning that if any additional stalking, waiting, verbal confrontation, or physical blocking behavior directed at Irene occurred at any public or private location moving forward, Thorne Group's legal counsel team would immediately initiate full formal civil harassment restraining lawsuit proceedings with the Los Angeles County Superior Court. seeking documented monetary compensatory damages for emotional distress, and a permanent statewide court-ordered no-contact legal order that would permanently bar Jason from approaching, communicating with, or being within 500 yards of Irene's residential address, agency office tower, and all regularly frequented public venues she visited on a weekly basis. This permanent court order would also generate a negative long-term legal record on Jason's statewide background check file that would automatically disqualify him from qualifying for any formal white-collar or skilled blue-collar full-time employment position anywhere within California state borders for the foreseeable next 10 years of his adult life. Upon receiving the official certified legal letter in his mailbox and reading through its detailed legal consequences line by line, Jason was overcome with genuine paralyzing fear of permanent employment blacklisting and formal court-ordered financial penalty damages, daring no longer to directly confront or physically intercept Irene in public spaces for the immediate short term afterward. Instead of abandoning his desperate pursuit of her sympathy entirely, he shifted his harassment tactics entirely offline, reaching out individually to every single mutual high school, college, and business friend he and Irene had shared throughout their years living and working together across Los Angeles County, spreading a carefully crafted, fabricated, tragic personal narrative designed to elicit public pity from every acquaintance he contacted. He claimed he'd only abandoned Irene and chosen Lena back at the time due to a single momentary foolish, youthful lapse of judgment clouding his better sense, insisted he'd never truly stopped harboring deep, enduring, romantic love for Irene beneath every terrible choice he'd made to betray her trust, and repeatedly begged every mutual friend like Sarah to act as a neutral third-party mediator to pass along his tearful requests for forgiveness and financial rescue to Irene privately on his behalf. Sarah and every single one of their long-standing shared old acquaintances possessed full, unvarnished first-hand knowledge of the complete timeline of Jason's cold, cruel, ungrateful behavior throughout the divorce process and subsequent corporate bankruptcy scandal. Every friend had personally witnessed Jason's vicious public degradation of Irene at the $1 million Beverly Hills wedding reception, his reckless, multi-million-dollar draining of the import company's core cash reserves solely to fund Lena's non-stop luxury shopping sprees and elite social schedule, and his outright refusal to negotiate an equitable marital asset split during divorce settlement negotiations in favor of forcing Irene to accept a measly $20,000 lump sum settlement with zero additional financial compensation for her hundreds of thousands in personal startup capital investments into Miller Import and Export's founding operations. Not a single mutual friend felt the slightest flicker of genuine compassionate sympathy for Jason's current destitute, debt-ridden predicament, nor would any agree to voluntarily pass along his desperate pleading messages to Irene behind her back to mediate a potential reconciliation or debt relief arrangement for him. Sarah privately relayed every detail of Jason's coordinated round-robin campaign of emotional manipulation and pity-seeking gossip to Irene over a casual midweek lunch meeting at a downtown cafe a few days later, and Irene only nodded her head once in quiet acknowledgement after hearing the full account, displaying zero visible emotional reaction, no anger, sadness, amusement, or lingering nostalgia at the second-hand report of Jason's continued delusional harassment attempts behind closed doors. Around this exact 6-month timeline following the hotel gala confrontation incident, Irene and Evan's romantic relationship progressed steadily, peacefully, and without conflict of any kind, and the pair formally finalized their official wedding date for the following spring at a private Malibu oceanfront estate venue they jointly toured and reserved after months of venue comparison site visits. Evan never pressured Irene to shut down or scale back the Carter cross-border consulting agency she'd single-handedly built from nothing with her $20,000 divorce settlement startup capital. Instead, he voluntarily invested significant Thorne Group corporate expansion capital to fund the opening of multiple regional branch consulting offices across Miami, Chicago, and Seattle, fully respecting every long-term career ambition and business growth target Irene outlined to him in their regular private strategy conversations together. In their quiet, daily off-work personal life outside of industry business meetings and client consultations, Evan paid meticulous, consistent attention to every small personal preference, quiet comfort, and unspoken emotional need Irene had expressed to him over their months of dating, filling the massive empty void of gentle, thoughtful daily consideration, and consistent emotional support that Jason had never once bothered to provide her over 5 full years of shared marital partnership running. Miller import and export side by side. Their daily romantic dynamic contained no endless, petty domestic arguments, irrational jealous outbursts, manipulative emotional mind games, or hidden self-serving financial schemes of any kind. Only consistent mutual professional respect, quiet, loyal companionship, and unpressured, relaxed, peaceful happiness absent of the constant stress and betrayal Erin had endured throughout her prior marriage to Jason. Simultaneously, Jason's already unlivable standard of living deteriorated further week by week, with no signs of potential improvement on the horizon whatsoever. Debt collection attorney Mr. White and his rotating team of collection agents increased their frequency of daily front-door apartment visits to multiple times per single day, pounding loudly on his studio unit's thin metal entry door at 7 a.m. sharp every morning and returning again after dark at 8 p.m. each evening to repeat aggressive repayment demands and legal consequence warnings. The cheap absentee landlord managing Jason's South LA low-income apartment complex issued a formal written eviction notice to his unit after 3 consecutive full calendar months of completely unpaid monthly $320 rent installments, giving him only 14 calendar days to vacate the premises permanently or face formal county small claims court eviction proceedings with additional court-ordered back rent penalty fees added to his growing personal debt balance ledger. One chaotic afternoon at the Long Beach Freight Yard Port Labor Facility, Jason's constant mental preoccupation with crippling regret and unrelenting debt stress left him severely distracted while operating a heavy motorized shipping container lift dolly during his assigned shift. He misjudged the weight balance of a loaded metal cargo crate, dropping the full container onto a concrete loading platform and causing thousands of dollars in documented client merchandise damage and port facility. Structural scuff marks to the paved loading zone pavement surface. Foreman Hank reviewed the full client damage claim paperwork filed against the freight yard management company the very next business morning and made the unavoidable decision to terminate Jason's casual daily labor employment on the spot with 0 advance written notice or final week of shift scheduling, stripping him of his only steady, reliable monthly source of minimal income entirely without any remaining fallback employment options left to pursue for immediate cash generation. Left completely jobless, deeply in arrears on rent and drowning in tens of millions in unresolved multi-layered debt obligations, Jason made 2 separate desperate daytime trips, all the way to downtown Los Angeles' Central Thorn Global Investment Group 40-story corporate high-rise headquarters, building over the course of one single week. Lingering outside the guarded glass front main entrance lobby early each morning before office staff arrived for their daily shifts to wait around in the vague, hopeless chance of crossing paths with Evan exiting or entering the building unaccompanied. His only delusional plan upon spotting Evan was to drop to his knees on the sidewalk and beg the multi-billionaire CEO for a high 6-figure annual executive management position within Thorn Group's import/trade subsidiary divisions, hoping the generous high salary would allow him to rapidly pay down every outstanding debt balance in short order and escape his permanent destitute poverty cycle once and for all. Yet on both separate occasions, he traveled to the Thorn Group Tower's guarded main entrance. Uniformed on-site private building security officers spotted him loitering on restricted private corporate property within minutes of his arrival and immediately escorted him forcibly off the building's front sidewalk perimeter without permitting him any opportunity to step foot inside the lobby or make direct verbal contact with Evan or any senior Thorn Group executive staff members whatsoever. Large crowds of regular corporate office staff walking in and out of the building's entrance each morning recognized Jason's public reputation as a disgraced, traitorous former import business owner ruined by his own greed and blind infatuation with a manipulative gold digger, whispering mocking, judgmental side commentary to one another as they passed by the security team escorting Jason off the private property grounds, crushing what tiny remaining shreds of personal self-respect and pride he still clung to completely and forcing him to flee the downtown corporate district in full public embarrassment each time without achieving any part of his desperate begging objective. He sent dozens of lengthy, rambling pleading text messages and paragraph-long social media direct messages to every old phone number Instagram profile and Facebook account he could recall Lena had ever owned back during their 3 months of secret romantic entanglement and subsequent brief marriage together, and dialed dozens of random unknown local and Miami area phone numbers in a frantic blind attempt to reach her current active cell line, yet every single digital message went permanently unread, and every unknown dialed phone number either went straight to disconnected era recordings or unfamiliar, unrelated third-party voice mailboxes with zero trace of Lena's actual current contact information anywhere online or offline. Lena had fully erased every single digital and physical trace of her Los Angeles-based identity after fleeing to Miami with Jason's stolen luxury goods and liquid cash assets, severing every single possible communication channel linking herself back to him with absolutely no intention of ever re-establishing contact for any reason moving forward. All the sports cars, certified jewelry, limited edition designer apparel, and high-rise apartment rental payments Jason had funded entirely through a legally siphoned corporate import company revenue had been fully converted into untraceable offshore liquid currency funds for Lena's exclusive personal use, with not a single dollar or valuable physical item returned to Jason to offset his massive outstanding debt balance or alleviate his daily poverty and creditor harassment struggles. Even trapped at rock bottom with every single professional, financial and personal support system completely collapsed around him, Jason still failed to conduct any genuine critical self-reflection on his own core character flaws of unrestrained greed, shallow infatuation-driven poor judgment, and ungrateful, heartless betrayal toward the only person who'd ever given him unconditional loyal support through every early career hardship life could throw at him. He continued to pin every single last shred of hope for escaping his permanent, destitute, debt-ridden living conditions entirely on the unrealistic fantasy of Irene's sudden spontaneous pity and willingness to hand over millions of dollars in personal financial relief out of leftover 5-year shared startup relationship sentiment, fully ignoring the irreversible permanent damage and multi-million-dollar financial losses his calculated betrayal and reckless corporate mismanagement had inflicted on Irene's personal finances, professional reputation, and long-term career trajectory back when they'd co-founded Miller Import and Export together side by side years prior. After losing his sole steady port freight labor employment position to the costly shipping container cargo accident mistake, Jason was forced to take 2 separate simultaneous minimum-wage part-time casual labor jobs operating 7 days a week with 0 scheduled days off to scrape together barely enough combined weekly cash to cover his overdue apartment rent payments and minimal basic grocery food supplies for daily survival. Every single morning from 4 a.m. until 11 a.m., he hauled heavy crates of raw fresh fruits and vegetables at a downtown Los Angeles wholesale farmers market distribution warehouse for $12 hourly wage with no paid meal breaks provided. Every single evening from 6 p.m. until 1 a.m. overnight, he worked back-breaking hot commercial restaurant dishwashing shifts at a busy 24-hour downtown diner earning only $10 an hour after mandatory payroll tax deductions, surviving on less than 4 full hours of uninterrupted sleep each 24-hour rotation cycle, to juggle both exhausting manual labor schedules, back-to-back daily without rest. The constant non-stop physical strain of double shifts 7 days a week rapidly accelerated irreversible physical deterioration across Jason's entire body, triggering chronic, unrelenting lower back muscle spasms, permanent joint stiffness in his shoulders and knees, and severe recurring inflammatory gastritis stomach ulcers from years of cheap fast food nutrient-poor diet and chronic sleep deprivation. He possessed 0 disposable leftover income to afford even a single low-cost urgent care clinic consultation appointment for basic pain management and anti-inflammatory medication prescriptions to treat his worsening chronic physical health conditions. Forced to rely exclusively on cheap, over-the-counter generic ibuprofen pain tablets purchased at dollar grocery stores to temporarily dull, crippling stomach and back flare-ups whenever they struck throughout his grueling double-shift work weeks.